1983, a Soviet geophysical station in Yakutia recorded a signal from beneath the frozen ground. 1 week later, the station disappeared from the maps. Officially, it monitored seismic activity, magnetic fluctuations, radio interference, and permafrost depth, a small technical outpost where winter felt permanent. No town nearby. But in late November of 1983, the instruments inside that station recorded something that should not have existed. The signal was not coming from space. It was not coming from a military transmitter. It was not coming from another station. It was coming from below, from somewhere under 4 kilometers of frozen earth. And the strangest part was not that they heard it. The strangest part was what they found when they decoded the first sequence, because hidden inside the signal were the coordinates of the station itself. But not from the year 1983, from a survey system used 40 years before the station was built. The exact location is still disputed. According to former workers in the Soviet geological system, the site was built in the earth. It existed to study permafrost and seismic behavior, but the choice of location never made much sense. There was, however, one anomaly. In the 1960s, field geologists working in the area allegedly noticed short magnetic bursts. The events lasted only seconds. It was as if a huge generator had been switched on deep underground, then immediately shut off again. No earthquake followed. No explosion. No radiation spike. Just one pulse, then silence. The station itself was small. A few living modules, a diesel room, a radio mast, an instrument room, and a separate underground block where the most sensitive equipment was kept. The crew usually had 8 to 12 people, engineers, radio operators, a mechanic, and a shift commander, but every few months the equipment not interference, not a tremor, not a magnetic storm, a lower impulse, as if the people writing the reports already understood that the source was beneath them. At first, nobody panicked. But by 1982, the pattern was too clean to ignore. The impulses repeated every 47 days. Almost exactly. The main event happened at night, during a storm, when the temperature was below -40. Shortly after 3 in the morning, the duty engineer noticed that one of the recording needles was moving in a pattern. It was not jumping randomly. Short pulse. Long pulse. Then the same pattern appeared on another instrument. Then a third. Within minutes, the signal appeared across magnetic, seismic, and radio systems. That was impossible. A radio transmitter could not create a clean seismic pattern. A tremor could not produce a rhythmic radio signal. A simple electrical fault could not appear across independent systems at the same time. So the crew followed procedure. They recorded everything. Then they sent an urgent message up the chain. It sounded more like machinery. A deep hum, followed by clicks, followed by... The intervals between the pulses repeated with unnatural precision. An engineer tried treating the pattern as a numerical sequence. That was when the first result appeared. 6 numbers. Then 6 more. Then the sequence repeated. In one report, allegedly seen years later in an archive, the problem was that the coordinates pointed to the station, but not in the coordinate system currently used by the station. They matched an older survey reference used decades earlier, before the object existed, which meant the signal was pointing to a place that had not yet been built. After that first night, the station remained active. The official instruction was simple: keep working, keep recording, do not abandon a site because of one unexplained anomaly. But within 24 hours, the crew began reporting symptoms. Headaches, insomnia, nausea, pressure inside the ears. The radio operator wrote one sentence in the log: "The hum is audible without equipment." Nobody believed him at first. Then the shift commander, they all described it in almost the same words, as if someone far below the station was dragging a sheet of metal across stone. Sometimes the hum would stop, and when it stopped, the silence was worse, because in that silence people heard short clicks. The same clicks from the recording, only now they were not coming through the speakers. They seemed to be inside the skull. On the third day, a group arrived from the regional center. Officially, they were there to... They carried unmarked cases, and almost immediately they removed several reels of tape from the instrument room. According to one account, this was when the second decoding was made. The coordinates were only the first layer. The next part of the signal contained a date, a month, a year, and a time. Then someone checked old geological records. At that exact date and time, 40 years earlier, a geological party had disappeared in the same region. The men had frozen during a route crossing, but their bodies were never found. Searchers found only a sled, a broken theodolite, and a metal sample box lying open in the snow. There were no rock samples inside, only a piece of burned paper. On that paper was a drawing, 6 points, and a line descending from them into the ground. After that, drilling began at the station. Officially, it was a controlled borehole for permafrost research. Unofficially, they were trying to find out what was beneath the site. The drill worked for several days. Then, just past 100 meters, the failures started. The metal overheated. Sensors dropped out. Radio contact with the drilling block vanished for seconds at a time. Then a sound came up through the borehole. Not gas, not cracking ice, not shifting stone. The same low hum. Only now, everyone could hear it. The drilling stopped immediately. The borehole was covered with a heavy metal plate. That night, one engineer noticed the plate vibrating. Not violently. Barely enough to see, like a lid over water beginning to boil. In the morning, a thin layer of frost covered the metal. Inside the frost, they were not tool marks. They formed the same symbol as the burned paper, 6 points, and one line downward. 1 week after the first signal, the station transmitted its final routine message. It was short. Work terminated. Personnel ready for evacuation. Then the radio went silent for almost 9 hours. When a helicopter finally reached the station, the object was empty. Not destroyed, not burned down, not buried by the storm, just empty. Tea had been left on the table. Instruments were still powered on in the equipment room, but the people were gone. Later, an official explanation appeared. The crew had been evacuated earlier and the transport records were simply lost. Convenient. But there was one detail that never fit. In the diesel room logbook, the final entry was written in the mechanic's hand. Only one sentence. They are knocking back from below. After that, the journal ended. According to the stories, that is not what happened. Within days, a military group arrived. The radio mast was... The underground block was filled with concrete. The borehole was not simply sealed. It was packed with cement, metal filings, and heavy mineral additives, as if they were not trying to stabilize it, as if they were trying to silence it. The site vanished from public maps. In later archive diagrams, the area appeared as ordinary swamp and forest. The most disturbing part of the story surfaced years later. In the early 2000s, a private collector allegedly bought a box of old magnetic tapes with technical markings. One tape contained a low-frequency recording. Most of it was static and broken noise, but near the middle, after a series of pulses, there was something else. A human voice. Very quiet, but after several attempts to clean the recording, the same phrase seemed... Then a pause, then another phrase. We are already here. There are several possible explanations. Maybe it was all technical failure, Soviet secrecy, and rumor. Maybe the signal was natural, rock pressure, magnetic anomalies, strange permafrost effects. But that explanation struggles with the details. The 47-day cycle, the coordinates, the date of the missing geological party, the same symbol appearing twice, 40 years apart. There is also a third theory, the one usually spoken quietly, that the station did not discover the source by accident. It was built above it on purpose, and the events of 1983 were not a first contact. They were a second attempt. There is nothing left to prove the story, No towers, no buildings, no sign, only forest, snow, and ground that freezes each winter into something harder than concrete. But former geologists repeated one detail. They said that if you stand there at night, turn off the engine, switch off the light, and listen, at first you hear only wind, then it begins to sound like machinery far below you. Very deep, very slow, and after a while, you realize the sound is not getting louder. It is getting closer. So if the legend is true, the Soviet station was not closed because the signal disappeared. It was closed because one day, someone answered it. From below, for more sealed reports from the Hidden Archive, subscribe to the channel. And if this story felt too real, leave a like, because the next file is worse.